Shabbat Shalom. In this week's Parsha, Parashat Kitetse, we have the mitzvah of Shilוח HaKain. It applies to birds that are not domesticated, birds that you find in the wild or in the wild urban jungle. And should you want to take the eggs or the chicks and the mother is sitting on them, then the Torah commands us to chase away the mother. Actually, the Torah phrases it first of all as a lav, as a commandment that forbids us to take lo tikach ha'em al banim, not to take the mother with the chicks. And then only afterwards do we have the mitzvah to say shalech tishalach, send her away. And every time the Torah repeats a commandment with this formula shalech tishalach, it means as many times as needed. If it's 100 times and 100 times. Now this mitzvah, which doesn't seem all that unusual, has drawn a tremendous range of reactions and interpretation in Jewish history, going from one extremity to the other, and arousing theological reactions that seem out of place. We see this first of all in the Mishnah already. In the Mishnah, there's a Mishnah that says specifically, Omer al kansipu yagiu rachamecha meshetkim oto. Someone who adds to his prayer this formula, al kansipu yagiu rachamecha, whether it's a statement that God has a special mercy on these birds or not, it's something that Chazal felt was so reprehensible that we should stand up in shul and shut this guy up, stop him right there. Now, it seems to me implausible. It is just sort of a theoretical, hypothetical possibility if perchance someone should, want to improvise on his prayer and add al kansipor yigur hachamecha, that we should stop him. It seems to me that if this thing actually made it into the Mishnah as a full-fledged Mishneh halacha, then it means there was some sort of movement, some sort of widespread practice where people were putting this formula al kansipor yigur hachamecha into the prayer in a way which was not authorized by Chazal, and Chazal wanted to stamp it out. Now the question is, why were they doing that? And the problem is that I think that by the time of the Gemara, in that those could be just several hundred years between the Mishnah recording, or between what the Mishnah records and between what the Chachmei HaTalmud, the Amoraim, debate, it could be several hundred years. I don't think that they really remembered what the issues were. The Gemara has two anonymous opinions. One says that making the statement introduces jealousy between the creatures. The whole animal kingdom will hear that God has given special consideration to these birds of the wild, and there will be jealousy among within the animal kingdom. The other is that osem midotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachamim v'lo gezerot. This is a very serious theological issue. That the correct Jewish position is that the commandments are gezerot. They are essentially irrational decrees, decrees that don't have any meaning that we can know or that we have a right to actually specify as the meaning. It's simply God says, do this or don't do that, and we obey. And to say al kansipur yigur hachamecha means that no, we understand why there is a mitzvah of Shilוח HaKain. God has taken mercy on this mother and her chicks, and that's wrong. But these are just guesses. Chad amar. And the Yerushalmi has a different stab at a solution. I don't think that the collective memory had any real idea what movement there was that was behind people coming up and adding this to the prayers. Now, in the Middle Ages, some of our greatest Jewish authorities took an entirely different approach. The Rambam tells us in the Moreh Nevuchim that the whole rationale for this mitzvah, and he is clear that mitzvahs do have rationale, they're not gezerot. The whole rationale is basically to prevent us, to dissuade us from taking the chicks or the eggs. That is to say, we shouldn't be doing this. There's really no reason to go and take eggs in the middle of this process of hatching or little chicks. And so the Torah has made it difficult to do this by requiring us to chase away the mother no matter how many times she comes back. And of course, the mother will not give up that easily. And so eventually, if people, chase the mother away and she comes back and they chase her again and she comes back, say, oh, well, forget it, it's not worth it. And that's the whole point of the biblical commandment. It's the lo tikach em al banim, leave them alone. The Ralbag takes this very idea, which I think he endorses, but takes it further and gives it a deeper rationale. The reason is that the mother, sitting on hatching the eggs and raising the chicks, is participating in a natural process which is responsible for having, generation after generation after generation of birds, which keeps the animal kingdom functioning. This is how the animal kingdom, the natural world works. You produce, youngs, and then the next they grow up and they produce their young. And to interfere in this process when the mother's in the middle of either sitting on the eggs or raising the small tiny chicks, it interrupts this important natural process of allowing a new generation of birds to come in. And that is the reason why the Torah has made this rule to dissuade us from doing anything, and just leave them alone, leave the mother alone, leave the nest alone, leave the chicks alone, leave the eggs alone. Now, in more recent times, the understanding of the mitzvah has taken and entirely moved to the other extreme. It's considered a mitzvah one should make a special effort to find a nest so that one can fulfill the mitzvah of shalach. And there's a certain man who has a business of pigeon removal, whatever you call it in English, in Bnei Brak, and he's happy to get a call about a nest of pigeons because then he can perform the mitzvah of shalach. And there are all sorts of segulot that people talk about, and you can see on the internet. I wouldn't refer you to them. Segulot that if you fulfill this mitzvah, you'll meet your beshert. You can if you're single, you'll be able to find a mate, and if you're married and without children, then you'll have children. All this kind of stuff you can imagine. This is now the sort of the ideas that have taken hold, at least of the Judaism of the internet. We'll do this alone, and I want to turn on the final segment to Ralbag. So what's especially, I think, interesting and rewarding in the Ralbag is that he ties in this mitzvah, Shilוח HaKain, with the following mitzvah, which is a mitzvah of Makeh. If you build a house and has a flat roof, then you have to put a fence or railing around the roof in case that if someone, you go up on the roof and you're showing your neighbors the neighborhood or the wonderful view you have, that no one should chas v'shalom fall down and get hurt. And now, on the face of it, there doesn't seem to be any connection between the Makeh and Shilוח HaKain, just like these parashiot at the end of Sefer Devarim have just strings of mitzvot, each one taking up a a little parashia of 3 or 4 verses, with no apparent, not always an apparent connection between them. Ralbag says there is a connection. Just like when in the animal kingdom, in the natural process by which birds reproduce, laying eggs and having them hatch and raising the chicks, just like that natural process is a gift from God to preserve the species, to make sure that there'll always be birds, and we should not interfere with that natural process. So also building homes is actually a natural process for humans who have been gifted by God with what he calls a seichel ha'ma'asi, the practical intellect, this sort of innate mental ability of humans to think of how to design and build and use tools that are useful for them. We don't know who made the first house, who made the first oven, who made the first knife, who made the first brick, who made the first piece of clothing. These are things that seem to have somehow spontaneously or naturally emerged from the human ability to think, which animals don't have. And this is what Ralbag, in keeping, of course, with the Greek philosophy that it took hold and was accepted by Jewish scholars everywhere, calls us the practical intellect. It's not the intellect that allows you to think about, abstruse, abstract matters. It's intellect that allows you to make things that people need. This is sort of a natural ability, and this natural ability has been given to us for our preservation. We are able to design and build homes because we need homes for shelter, and just like we shouldn't interfere with the natural process of the birds, bringing another generation of chicks, we shouldn't interfere with what the humans have produced, and as what is he would call really a sort of a natural process of building, constructing something for shelter, and have it turn into something which is actually does the opposite. Instead of being a house that keeps people safe, it's dangerous because you go up on the roof and there's no railing. And this is a really interesting and deep connection that Ralbag draws between the two mitzvot, and I think it's a wonderful thing to take away from the Parsha. Thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.